Welcome everybody to this presentation. This is about writing your best personal statement. What is a personal statement? What's a UCAS application? How does it all work? And how does this tie into making a strong application as well? So my name is Petia and I work for the University of Bath. I'm a student recruitment assistant here. However, I'm also a very recent graduate of the university. So I studied sociology here from 2017 to 2020, and I graduated earlier this year. So I've had the student experience up until quite recently. So if you have any questions pertaining to applying to university, what it's like to study in Bath or anything like that, I'd be more than happy to answer them. All right, let's get started. So applying to UK universities is all done through UCAS. UCAS coordinates all of the applications for UK universities, and if you want to study in the UK, you must apply through them. It allows students to make up to 5 university choices. So when you apply, you can either make just one, or you can make between 1 and 5 choices when you apply to university. So if you're dead set that you only want to go to one university, you can just make one application, or you can make multiple for multiple different universities. So the website link is on the screen right now. If you want to go to www.ucas.com, you can have a little browse around the website and see what they have on there. On there, they have a really wonderful search tool that can allow you to see which universities offer which courses, and kind of if you want to live in a certain part of the UK while you're studying, you can go by region as well. So you can have a really good browse of all that's available in terms of UK university courses on their website. Top universities are competitive and we do receive many applications per year. So this presentation is all about making a strong and effective application. So the UCAS timeline, we've already obviously passed the October the 15th deadline. So the October the 15th deadline is a deadline that carries on year to year. So every year it's the same deadline. And that is if you want to apply to Oxford or Cambridge, or if you want to apply to medicine, dentistry, or veterinary sciences. So it's important you get your application in on time for that if you want to apply to those universities or those courses. For everybody else and all other courses, the deadline is January 15th. So it's really, you can apply earlier on. You can apply basically anytime from September to January. That's the application window for undergraduate courses. It's really up to you when you apply. So if you start writing your personal statement in the summer before and you have everything set up so that you can apply by September or October, that's really wonderful. However, if you do need to leave it a bit later and you start it and you submit it maybe around December or even early January time, that's also fine as long as it's in by the deadline. So this deadline is called a guaranteed or an equal consideration deadline. It doesn't make a difference if you apply earlier or later, so long as it is by, on or before the deadline. Right. So then after you've given your application in, the universities that you've applied to will respond in one of 3 ways. So the most common 2 are a conditional offer and an unsuccessful application. So a conditional offer is made to students who are still pending in their qualifications. This is the most common type of offer. So if you are still currently studying maybe your A-levels or your IB, the conditional offer will say, yes, we will accept you so long as you get these grades. So if I was applying to psychology and I got an offer, the University of Bath would say, as long as you get an A-star AA in your A-levels, you can be permitted to come in. An unconditional offer is less common and they are being phased out slowly. They're just fewer universities are using them and less frequently as well. So this, as you might have guessed, is not based on any academic kind of performance. So a university might just really, really like your application and they really want to see you at their university, and it doesn't matter to them that you meet any particular conditions. It can also be given to students who have already done their qualifications and maybe they're just applying a bit later. So if I had done my A-levels and I had already completed them and I've got all of my qualifications ready, then I can just go, and then I just maybe decide to take a year off or something and I apply later, then I could be made an unconditional offer because I've already done all of my qualifications. And then the third variation is an unsuccessful application. So this is when the university says, actually, we can't make you an offer at this time. Now, if you have, if you end up having 5 unsuccessful applications, then there is an option to go through what's called UCAS Extra, and you can find out more about that on their website. Decisions can be made very quickly, or they can take many, many months. So don't worry, just because your decision might be taking a little while to come through, it doesn't mean that you're any less likely to get in. At the same time, just because you're, you know, let's say if you and your friend applied to the same university at the same time, just because you got your offer first doesn't mean that they're less likely to get theirs. So once you receive all 5 decisions, you then must select your firm, your first choice, and your insurance, your second choice. So the UCAS application is set out like this. Section 1 is your personal details and your chosen courses. Section 2 is your qualifications, any grades you've already obtained and any predicted grades, any pending qualifications. Section 3 is your personal statement, and then section 4 is your reference, and that's usually given by a teacher or maybe a head of sixth form or something like that at your school, and they just help support your application. So we, when making our decision whether to give you an offer, we use sections 2, 3, and 4. So we need to know, obviously, that you are academically capable of being at the University of Bath or any particular university for that matter. So we would look at your grades obtained and what you're predicted. Your personal statement is also very, very important, particularly at the University of Bath. And then your reference is also a good indicator that you have the support of your teachers as well. So then moving on to personal statements and what they look like. So what is a personal statement? A personal statement is the place in the UCAS application where you say why you want to study this particular course and what makes you a good fit for it. You must demonstrate very specifically how your qualifications are relevant to your choice of study and how you will use them. So it has a maximum character limit of 4,000 characters or around 47 lines. It's whichever one comes first. And it will be read by the admission selectors at the universities that you apply to. It might also be passed to some admission staff in the particular department that you're applying to. So if you were applying to, let's say, study geography, the admissions office could pass that application on to the admissions officer in the geography department to have another look at it. So it could be seen by a few different people. It may be read by 2 or more university staff at each university you apply to. So with Oxford and Cambridge, they might show it to a few different colleges if you don't get an offer from the first college that you apply to. So your personal statement is incredibly, incredibly important. For the majority of courses, it's your only opportunity to speak directly to why you want to study the course and why you are a good fit for it. At the University of Bath, we don't do many interviews. We do very, very few for very, very few courses. However, if you were to go on and do an interview, it could provide a basis for the interview. It probably would. So you need to make sure that whatever you're putting in it, you are 100% confident in, because you might be asked about that in the interview. It also allows you to provide evidence of any work experience or any kind of extracurriculars that you've done. And it could also crucially be used in a near-miss application. So a near-miss application is when you just don't quite hit the grades that you need to get into university, but in that kind of circumstance, an admissions officer might look at your application and think, you know, if the personal statement's really, really strong, we're still going to give them an offer to come and study here. So this is kind of what we're looking for in a personal statement, and why it's really important. So a good way to think about the personal statement is that you just imagine you are being interviewed, and the question that you want to answer is, why do you want to study this subject and what makes you the right person for this course? As long as in your personal statement you are answering either parts of that question or both parts of that question, you are on the right track. So remember, many courses don't interview for applicants. This is your chance to show it. So obviously we are speaking in an international sense in this presentation. I just wanted to kind of highlight the different ways that the personal statement might differ from other countries' university applications. It is very subject focused. So with other university processes in other countries, so for example, in the US, if you're applying to study there, it might not be so subject focused. It might, your personal statement for those universities, it might ask you to focus on how you are strong in a variety of subject areas in all aspects of academic life. In a UK personal statement, we are looking for a subject specific personal statement. So you only talk about what you are looking to study. Likewise, you don't need to mention any individual university names in the personal statement, because you will be applying to several at one time, possibly. So there's no need to mention, you know, I want to study at this university because you have a reputation for this and I like that. You know, you can just, maybe you can say, I really want to study and improve my knowledge using this wonderful research available at university, but absolutely it's not required that you, there's no mention of individual university names. So you demonstrate aptitude for one subject, maybe two. So if you were doing a joint honours course, this is where it could perhaps be two. So if you were doing, say, international management with German, then you would need to demonstrate aptitude for both of those. You don't need to demonstrate aptitude for a variety of subjects. And then the character count is limited and is set standard for all UCAS applications. So it's not the case that at one university they'll allow you to write 3,000 words, and at another university they'll allow you to write 1,000 words. It is 4,000 characters as a set standard, or 47 lines. Okay, so how is the personal statement structured? So first, we start off with, why do you want to study the course? This is kind of your brief introduction paragraph. Then we go into the bulk of the personal statement, your academic interests. This should take up these kind of sections 1, 2, and 4 should take up maybe around 80% of the personal statement. So these are the bulk bits. The third section is your life, your work experiences, any skills and achievements you have. This is kind of answering the question, what makes you prepared to be a university student? And then finally, you have your concluding statements. So first off, when you're answering the question, what makes you want to study the course, it can be quite daunting at first, but if you have some thoughts in your mind already, I recommend maybe just putting all of your thoughts down on paper. It doesn't have to have a specific structure to it. It could even be a mind map. You could just put a bubble, why do you want to study this course, and have different things coming off it. If you try and answer these questions, why does this subject interest you? Is there a specific part of that subject that interests you? So if I was applying to study history, is early medieval history a particularly interesting part of history for me? Or is it more modern post-Enlightenment history that interests me? Things like that. This is what we kind of want to see, that you are specific in your subject. How do your current studies relate to your proposed course of study? So you might have found, given, if we take the history example again, if you were studying history at school, then you might have found that incredibly, you might have found your passion for that subject there, and that's how that relates. And then finally, what skills do you have, do you possess that make you an ideal candidate for the program? Now, don't worry about maybe highlighting this one as much in this paragraph, because you will have the opportunity to highlight your skills later on in the personal statement. So the second part of the personal statement is academic interests. So as I said, this forms a big part of the personal statement. So the first thing you might consider is, what have you done in school or college to help develop your interest in the subject you're applying to? So if we take the history example again, you might have studied, let's say, Russian history as part of your subject, and then you might have had a coursework module. And in that coursework module, you chose to study more Russian history because you're so interested in it. So that's a really, really good thing to mention. You know, if you're particularly interested in Cold War history, you could say, I did my coursework in Cold War history, and that really helped develop my interest in the specific parts of history. It made me want to study it more when I go to university. How does your course relate to current affairs? So this is the part where you can talk about any further research you've done. So these last 2 points, how does your course relate to current affairs, and have you done anything outside of your school or college related to your academic interest? So it really takes a good personal statement. It takes a student being more than just kind of sufficiently expecting to have everything laid out for them in their A-level degree. You need to go in your A-levels or in your studies so far, you need to go that one step further. So have you done any extra reading around the subject? Have you seen any sort of TED Talks, or watched any documentaries, or maybe read a journal article, or even gotten some work experience in the field? That can really show that you are taking the initiative to go one step further. And importantly, you need to be able to say how it relates to current affairs. So when I was applying to sociology, for me, it was important to highlight that I thought that sociology reaches all different parts of human life. And that is what I found really, really interesting about it. And that's why I went and read this book, or watched this, or did this in my coursework. And so that was a really great way for me to highlight that. It's important to mention that when you're kind of telling us what you've done outside of your school or college studies, it's important that you are reflective in this. So don't just list everything you've read, everything you've watched, everything you've gone and researched further. It's important you're reflective. So if we take the example from before, the history example, I did my coursework in Cold War history, and I found this so interesting that I went and read a journal article, or I went and did further research into the specific part, and it's important that you reflect. What did you learn from that? How did it contribute to your interest and make you want to study this subject even more? So those are really, really good bouncing points, and it's really important that every point you make is developed. So we have one really good piece of advice that goes around here. Every single sentence you write, ask yourself, so what? So I studied history at A-level and I read a journal article about something, so what? What did it teach you, and how did this spur your interest even further? Here is an example, and I'll give you a quick minute to read any particular kind of things that stand out to you, and then I'll help analyze it in a second. Okay. So we can see here we have some really good examples in there. It's not a perfect passage by any means, but it does highlight some good examples of academic interest outside of your traditional studies. So the first is the MOOC. So that's a massive online open course. You can find these online. A lot of them are free. This is a great way of showing interest outside of your traditional studies. So you might have gone and taken a course on viruses and vaccines. If you're studying something in biology, that could be really, really good. Or you could have taken it on, if we take the example from before, Cold War history, something like that. So these are courses that you maybe dedicate a couple of hours a week just to keeping up that course, and then you can get a certificate at the end, but we don't need that as proof that you've done the course. You can see here they've also read a book, they've entered an essay competition, and they've done an EPQ as well, the extended project qualification. So these are good examples of ways that you can show a lot of interest outside of what you're made to do in your curriculum. Okay, and then the next part is your life, your work experience, skills, and achievements. So here you're answering what makes me a good candidate for the university. You just want to show that you are a well-rounded person, you have skills that will help you when you go to university, and show that you are mature enough and prepared enough to go. So this can come from many, many different places. It can come from just your life. So you might just be a very organized person. You might just have a planner where you kind of organize everything, show all your deadlines, you plan your time out down to the hour, and that might be a really good example. You might have some work experience, maybe working in a cafe, maybe being a receptionist or something like that. Or you might have some sort of skills and achievements learned from sports activities. So skills that we want to see are things like confidence, communication, leadership, problem solving, financial planning, things like that that will just help you be prepared to be a university student. Don't worry if you don't have any work experience, especially in times like these. We are not saying you have to have work experience by any means in the area or field that you're applying to. You can get skills like this from other places, and it's not a requirement for all courses. I would say definitely make sure to research with individual universities and individual courses whether it is a definite requirement that you have work experience. And remember to research to see if your course is right. Okay. Wonderful. And again, it's important not just to list what you have, reflect on it. So I am the captain of a sports team. Okay, what does that teach you? Again, ask yourself the question, so what? It will give you leadership skills. It will give you communication skills, teamwork skills, things like that. Really important to have. So these are some examples of skills that you might gain from a part-time job. So for instance, confidence, communication, financial independence, and having some role of responsibility. And then these are some that you might get from being a member of a sports team. For example, leadership, things like that, quick to adapt, team working. So here's another example of a life or work experience. Here's an example paragraph passage. I'll just give you a second to read it and see if we can pick out the best bits. So we've got the assistant head of the sports committee. They point out exactly which skills they can pluck out from that example. Playing in a sport team, being a captain. Again, they highlight the skills, teamwork, communication, hard work, endurance, things like that. Being a peer mentor as well, and doing a MOOC that can help you with numerical and problem solving skills as well. So these are the kinds of things that we like to see in a personal statement. It just makes it really, really nice and strong. And then finally, you just want to tie it off really strongly, leave the right impression with the person who's reading your personal statement. So summarize it. It doesn't have to be very long. In fact, the concluding statement can be about 2 to 3 sentences. You just want to summarize it, mention any career plans. So if you say maybe something like what we have ahead here. Yep, so I do have an example. Just want to kind of mention career plans, focus on the course, why you should be offered a place, and what you can offer the university. So we have a final example here. This person has said, I'm confident, I have the skills, I'm ready. And I also, I'm excited to study economics. In the future, I aspire to become and then they put a career plan. So they have the forward thinking and they know what they will get from this degree and how it will help them reach their goal. So that's a really nice, strong concluding statement. So here we just finally have some final tips and tricks. The most important, I would say, is don't just list achievements and skills, as I said earlier, and do not, under any circumstances, plagiarize, because the UCAS detectors are extremely savvy. Anytime you apply to university, your personal statement is put through a plagiarism detector, and the UCAS system has a database of all the personal statements that have been submitted before yours. So they will measure yours up against that, and they will show if it has been plagiarized. If you have a sibling or a friend that has applied to UK university before, similarly, do not plagiarize off them. Try and form it in your own words. Do use an appropriate email address as well. We can see the email address that you apply with, and it might not affect the outcome of your application, but it's still just good to leave that right impression as well. Try reading out to family and friends, seeing what they think. Often you can be so deep in the writing process that you don't notice you've made tiny little errors here and there. And so reading out or letting other people read it can be a really great way of spotting that. And again, do make sure to draft and redraft again and again. So when I was writing my personal statement, I had maybe about 4 or 5 drafts, and I just let the same teacher read it again and again until we got it just right. Here is the UCAS website with their advice on undergraduate personal statements. It's a really, really good resource. I definitely recommend it. So if you go again to the UCAS website, they have all of this on there. And that is the end of the presentation. On the screen, I have a link and a QR code. They both go to the same page. This is just a form you can fill out if you are interested in hearing more from the University of Bath. We have some events coming up and things like that. So if you are interested in hearing more from us, we would love to see that. So if you want, scan the QR code or enter that link and you'll be able to fill out the form. Thank you.